Well, we're talking today to Bruce Holsinger. Hi, Bruce.
Hi there. Thanks for
And
having me.
you're welcome. And you are a writer who writes not just what he knows, but what he fears.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah,
So,
like there's a cliche about writers writing what they
yes,
know, and I always think about writing about, what scares us the most.
right. And so that brings us to the question, what is your latest book, Culpability? What is that about?
So Culpability, it's a suspenseful family drama about moral responsibility in the age of artificial intelligence. It's not a futuristic novel. It takes place right now. And it begins with a really mundane scenario of families in a minivan driving to Delaware for a lacrosse tournament. And they get in an awful accident on a highway. And the older son, Charlie, is at the wheel, but he's not driving. They're in a self-driving car, a car that's in self-driving mode, autonomous mode. The dad's sitting next to him working on the laptop, and the mom and two sisters are in the back. They're all busy doing various things. And the story kind of revolves around the question of who is responsible for the accident. Not only who might be responsible, but what. And then there's a number of twists in the novel. One is that the mother, Lorelai, is a world-leading expert on the ethics of artificial intelligence. And so her relationship to autonomy, to artificial intelligence, becomes a very complex issue as the novel goes on and creates a good deal of the suspense. To recuperate, the family goes down to a house on the Chesapeake Bay where they stay for about a week. And down there, some secrets about the accident and the kind of deep history behind it start to come out.
I'm curious, you are an English professor at the University of Virginia. How's AI affecting our young people?
Oh, I think it's having a huge effect on our students right now. My students will be the first people to tell me that that they worry about not being able to think the way that their parents did, not being able to read. I think our attention spans, it's not just young people, it's people my age as well. I'm far from young. But technology in general, not just artificial intelligence, is saturating the way we interact with the world so much that it sometimes can be really hard for me to sit down and just read a book
Oh,
these
yeah.
days. I hear
Mhm.
complaints like that all the time, and I think AI is only exacerbating that problem. AI doesn't just write for people this more and more; it also reads for people, summarizes. Um, so it's one of those, and that's just the least of it. That's It's one of the dilemmas that I wanted to think about in culpability.
Right. Right. And you do go into the moral responsibility, moral
Yes, yes.
in the book. Um, do you believe that we Americans are minimizing the effects of AI on our lives? I mean, what do people broadly
Hmm.
think? Are they just
That is a
ignoring and
yeah,
looking
that's such a
down?
great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's strange. I think a lot of people in my world, the world of humanities academics, on the one hand, we're minimizing things, as in we're kind of underestimating the power of these models simply because they hallucinate, they make all these mistakes, but they're extraordinarily powerful. But there's a lot of poo-pooing of their effects, of whether it's real intelligence that we're seeing, whether the phrase artificial intelligence is even valid. Then on the other hand, you have people who are very apocalyptic about it. And so I'm all over the place. I don't have a firm sense of it. The great thing about a novel, it's not an op-ed. It's not an opinion piece. Fiction allows us to, it's kind of an engine for thinking about things from a lot of different angles. And that's really that's how I wrote the book. That's how I imagine the different voices in it.
And then how long did it take you to write Culpability? I think you said at one point you wrote this faster than your other, what, three novels? I
Oh, there
think
are four novels.
those
Yes,
four
four
novels.
published novels. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, this novel, I think I probably, when I did the first draft, it probably took about a year. And then I had an agent who read it and had a number of suggestions. My editor had some suggestions. Went through a pretty hard copy edit. So, the revision process was another 6 months or so. But for me, this was relatively quick. It's actually fairly a fair amount shorter than my last few novels. So it's maybe that's one reason, but I think it also somehow I was really wrapped up in the story in a way that it was very consistent all the way through.
Right, I think that shows that you were very devoted to the subject. I'm intrigued by the way that you devote many passages to teenage texting, and it is so authentic. I wonder if you use AI to generate the conversation.
Oh no, I didn't use AI to generate the text of the book at all. But I'm a mimic. I think my wife calls me a natural mimic. So the passages that where Alice is interacting with the chatbot, the passages of moral philosophy from Lorelei, you see passages from her book.
Yes.
That's a result of me reading a lot in those genres and coming up with an authentic voice for a moral philosopher like Lorelei, who's interested in philosophy in the philosophy and morality of AI, or a chatbot conversation that somebody's having with, a with a teenager.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very believable. You write in short chapters. Why?
Yes. That is a fairly recent change for me. I used to my first few novels are the chapters are definitely longer, but I think there's a um number of reasons for that for culpability. One is that I really sees this as in part a suspense novel. Um it's a very I hope it's a very suspenseful read, keeps you turning the pages. So there's something about the short chapters I think appeal to readers of suspense, and I really when I'm reading a suspense novel or mystery I really like short chapters. But there's also about something about Noah is the main narrator
Yes.
of the book. You mostly see his first person point of view telling the story, and he thinks episodically, and I think he tells the story episodically. He experiences it. The first chapter opens with the family driving it. It ends with the beginning of the accident. The second chapter is the aftermath of the accident. So we go along, and instead, I could have had that just be a line break in the same chapter, but I really wanted to push the story, push the momentum of the story. And I do think short chapters are a way to do that.
Okay. And then what was your research like? I know that you interviewed a number of people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always try to do um, a little bit of immersive research. I went and test drove a number of cars that have a hands-free mode on the highway where you can really sit there and it just drives for you as long as you're not, looking down at your cell phone. Um, and I took a couple of Waymos when I was out in San Francisco, self-driving taxis. But I also interviewed a number of people in the field, people who work in ethics. I played around a lot with large language models to see how they work. I also read a lot of literature, poetry and prose that's written with AI. There's a wonderful short story by the writer Sheila Heti in the New Yorker, where she wrote questions. I think it was Claude, a kind of early model of Claude AI, and she prompted the AI and then got these responses, and she only published the responses, and that
Ah,
became the short story. It's absolutely fascinating. There's a number of writers doing really interesting experiments with large language models and with small language models.
yes, I was going to ask you what surprised you most about your research when you were talking to these
Oh yeah,
scientists.
yeah. I well, what I was saying before about that mix of minimization and apocalypticism. Um, it's funny. Have you heard of the P Doom number? This
Mm,
is the percentage chance that artificial intelligence will destroy humanity. And then any number of researchers and technologists in the field have a P-doom number. So that's
oh,
one thing that surprised me. But I think I was also surprised by the range of applications that people are finding for what gets called artificial intelligence. Um, across medicine, across automated driving and automated flying. The number of ways that these kind of deep learning models have crept into our lives already in a way that I wasn't aware of. And some of them have very little in common with each other, but just the extent of the percolation of AI into so many aspects of our lives.
Mm. And who is your agent and how did she help you through the development process?
Well, my agent is Ellen Levine at Trident Media Group, and she's actually a new agent. I hired her, or she hired me as a client
You.
about a year and a half ago. And she took the manuscript and she really loved it, and but had some thoughts about it, and she talked me into doing more with the chatbot, for example. She talked me into writing a different ending. The ending was a bit abrupt before, but now I think I have a much better resolution of the book. Agents can be, and same with editors, of course, sometimes even more so, can be so wonderful at getting you to see some of the things that you should change about your book. And I just have a great team working with me.
Ah, good. And
Yeah.
backtracking a little bit, talk to us a little bit about regret and remorse and
Mm.
personal growth.
Yes. So this book really deals with those kinds of problems. So the family is in this accident. And every member of the family at some point in a novel becomes convinced that they are responsible for what happened. Um, a big part of the novel's suspense is creating that kind of self-doubt and culpability, the title, on the part of the members of this family. And so I was really thinking the whole time about how when something like that happens, when members of your family get injured, and it's your fault, or the fatalities in the other vehicle, as happens in this case. Um, if you had made a different decision in that one split second, right? If you had if you'd turned left instead of turning right, if you'd waited 1 second to resolve the argument that you were in before walking out the door and seeing somebody for the last time. And I think, fiction is full of those kinds of situations where, people have these painful moments of regret. So that is I think with an accident, with something like moral responsibility, regret is the name of the game.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you hope readers will take away from culpability?
Mm. A couple of things on the most simple level. I think readers take what they want from any book. So it's wide open, and I hope they find whatever they want in it. Um, but I also, drilling down a little bit, I would love for readers to finish the book at a breathless pace, I hope, and then take a pause, take a breath, take a beat, and really think about where we are with technology right now, with AI, and whether it might be worth slowing down, or at least slowing down in our own lives, setting down our phones, turning them off, being with each other in a different way. So I always, when people close that back flap of one of my novels, I want them to stop. I always want them to stop. And in this case, maybe that stop is also a pause.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you have a P score?
What's that?
Do you have what is that P something? Do you have
Oh,
a,
P Doom number.
do you have
Oh,
a,
I'm at about a 7 or 8. I think climate change will get us first. But I
uh,
think AI is part of climate change. So who knows?
oh,
Uh,
okay.
but I do want to emphasize Culpability is not an apocalyptic novel. It's not at all dystopic. It's
Mm.
not futuristic. It's set in our moment. And every bit of technology described in it is something going on in our moment. So it's very much a novel of the present. I like to write novels that are set in our, like, actually today, or by the time the novel is published, right? Where things might change just a little bit.
It's an amazing book. It really is.
Oh, thank you.
For emerging writers, what advice do you have about breaking into publishing and also how can writers help shape this AI technology in a more appropriate, wise way?
Hmm. Well, a few answers to that. I'll start with the second one. I think that most of the writers I know, they might dabble with it, but there's not, you know, but one of the strange things about AI when it relates to writing is, people send things through spell check. That's increasingly controlled by AI or grammar check. They'll now make, even you do a Google search, it's
Right.
almost an automatic AI that pops up. So it's there, and there's a lot of resistance to it for very good reasons, certainly on my part. And I really think that I hope writers are taking a step back and, you know, cognizing in their own way with their own writing. As far as emerging writers, one of the biggest mistakes I see young writers that I work with make is finishing a manuscript and just sticking with that. And if you finished a manuscript, that's great. Go ahead and try to get an agent, try hard, but start immediately writing something else. That's, because congratulations, you finished a book. But, it took me three manuscripts even to get an agent, right? It took me a long, long time to find an agent. And of course, there's all kinds of stories about these 25-year-olds who get an agent immediately and have a, six-figure book deal. For most of us in the trenches, it's about, you know, sticking to it, persistence, finishing a book, starting another one as soon as you send it out to try to get an agent, start another one because practice is the only, practice butts and seat. That's the only way to make this work for the most part.
And so what are you working on next?
I'm working on a new novel. I can't say much about it, but it's another contemporary family drama that's thinking about the contemporary masculinity crisis. Very early stages.
Okay. Bruce Holsinger, thank you so much for being with us today.
Doris, thank you. It's been a delight.